Do I have to be clean on this?
No.
Then I have to tell you one of the first jokes I ever heard as a Rhode Islander, as a kid, that I thought was the funniest thing in the world, and I may have shared this with you already, was, did you know they're merging the towns of Cumberland and Woonsocket, and they're going to call it Come Suck It? Come on. That's a great Rhode Island joke, is it not?
All right, everybody. With us this week, we're joined by Tom Cotter, a Rhode Island native, America's Got Talent finalist, and an award-winning comedian. Funny guy, funny personality, and we're here to share some jokes, shoot some shit, and learn about the background of Tom Cotter. So, Tom, welcome to the podcast, and how's everything going?
It's going well. I've never actually shot shit. I don't know if I've ever done that, if I've ever used a firearm to hit feces, but I'm ready to do it today. Let's do it.
Everything happens on Beers, Business, and Balls. So let's hit it off with the hard-hitting question. A question you might not even have an answer, but who is Tom Cotter?
Oh, God. Well, there's two of us. Well, there's many of us, I'm sure. But the other guy who is on social media is a car guy. He wrote a book called The Hemi in the Garage or something, and he's famous for that. And my friend Adam Ferrara is a comic and had the other Tom Cotter on his podcast before me. So he's dead to me, because why would you choose a car guy over a comic? That's ridiculous. Who am I? I'm the son of Dr. Walter Cornelius Cotter, who is a neurosurgeon and put the halo brace on Vinny Paz. That's what a lot of people know him for. But he had a glorious career as a neurosurgeon in Rhode Island. He raised 6 kids. I'm the youngest, the runt of the litter. And we all are still very fond of our Rhode Island roots. 3 of my sisters live right around Providence. And the 3 boys were the Brady Bunch, 3 boys, 3 girls. The 3 boys all got out of Dodge. I'm actually the closest. Although, I don't know, my brother Steve lives in New Hampshire and my brother Dave lives in Kansas. So we got paroled, but my sisters are still around.
So, I mean, we don't doubt that you've probably always been funny. But that wasn't, you went to school, right? You weren't just like out of high school and like, yes, I'm going full-fledged comedy, right? So you go to Denison, you study poli-sci there. What was the plan if it wasn't comedy?
Law. I was going to be a lawyer. That was my dream when I was in maybe junior year of high school. I was hanging out I went to Moses Brown, and I was the poorest kid there. But all those kids were sons of doctors, lawyers, financial guys, etc. And my lawyer friends, A, had tons of money, but B, when they got in trouble, their dad got them out of trouble. And I as a kid, I'm like, wow, you get to get a jail-free card and you get to drive a Beamer. So what is wrong with that? So I always wanted to be a lawyer. My dad hated that at first because he's a doctor and lawyers sue doctors. But so many of his friends were lawyers that he hopped on board that. And so I was poli-sci, but it was pre-law. And then I was a clerk for a judge. And then I followed, I don't know if you remember Raw Lovett, but he was a famous lawyer in Rhode Island and famous for the Mickey Mouse stuff. And he was a friend of my dad's. They're both in heaven now and both giants in my mind. But Raw Lovett let me follow him around with carrying his briefcase for a winter semester. So I definitely wanted to pursue law. And then I was a cop on Nantucket. That was my summer job. And everything was geared, tunnel vision, towards being a lawyer. And then when I was senior year of college, I entered a little talent show we had at Denison. And my talent, allegedly, was comedy. And I got up and I just eviscerated everybody, the fraternities, the faculty, the everybody. I was disqualified from the competition for using foul language. But for the next 2 weeks, walking around campus, people who hated me were high-fiving me. I mean, everybody loved that I had taken everybody to task. And so that was the first bite that infected me. And then it's incurable. I've been doing it ever since, and it's been 35 years.
Now,
yeah,
was that
yeah, go ahead, Will.
I was going to say, was that something that was just like off the rip? Like, oh, I see this show that I'm going to throw my name in the hat? Or were you at night, whether ripping jokes to your friends or just stuff in your mind that you're like, oh, maybe I could try this out?
Well, I am famous for being number 2. I ran for DCGA, which is Denison College Government Association. I ran for that and lost. I came in second to that, and I came in second to a dog act on national television. So I just can't finish. But having lost that, when I was running for office to be president of the student government, I was painting myself as a goody two shoes, where in fact I wasn't. And right after I lost the election came this Muscular Dystrophy Association talent show. And I said, well, they didn't elect me, so I'll show them the other side of Tom Cotter. And that's what I went up and they almost shut the mic off. I mean, I was really being mean to everybody. Denison is such a clown show. It's the wealthiest college. We had pizza delivery and golf carts. It was sad. It was, again, I was the poorest kid there. And my dad was a neurosurgeon. So, I mean, it was just ridiculous. So I made fun of everybody. And that was the first time that had come about. And then I started watching more comedy. And then it just built from there. I saw Buddy Hackett when I was 17 at the Cape Cod Melody Tent. That furthered my interest in comedy. And then we had comedians come to Denison when I was at Denison. I saw them and I thought, wow, I'd like to try that. And that's it. Never looked back.
We're going to come back to all the cool stuff you've done, but we've got to dive into the Rhode Island roots too. So first of all, I mean, usually, your Wikipedia and all this stuff, like you're in a nice suit, you've got a crisp look, but you've also been wearing some URI and Providence merch as well. So how do we get you on the Bryant Bulldogs, which is our alum, of course? How do we get you? How do we get you some merch? What do we need to do?
Quality school. When I was growing up, I'm aging myself. I don't say dating myself because I do have sex with myself, but I don't date myself. Bryant College was right where I lived. Bryant College was right on the east side of Providence, and Brown was there, and Brown was taking up so much of the real estate. Bryant said, "Screw this. We're out of here." So they moved to Smithfield, but they sold all their buildings to Brown. And so I was very familiar with Bryant College. My brother-in-law had gone there. And then when they moved, what a great business school and a great lacrosse team too, by the way.
Yeah.
And Rhode Island's not a huge state, as you know. So I try my pride in my little state is enormous. And I wear PC stuff. I wear URI stuff because my twins go to URI right now. My twins are juniors at University of Rhode Island. My sister went to Brown. My brother went to Brown. My dad went to Brown. My mom went to Pembroke, which became part of Brown. It's the sister school. And I went to Moses Brown. So we all were very loyal to our Rhode Island roots, all of my siblings and everybody. My brothers moved away, but they still, they love Dell's Lemonade. They love coffee syrup, autocrat. They root for, we're all Bruins, Red Sox, Celtics, Patriots fans because we always will be. And so, yeah, I'm proud of my Rhode Island roots. Smallest in size, but number one in teen pregnancy. And I will follow that till I die.
There's definitely a lot we can be number one at. I don't know if it's good or bad, but teen pregnancy, that's one you can throw on the list. While growing
Before
up,
you get to your next question, I do want to compliment you. I love beers, business, and balls. I mean, that's a quality, and I do a ton of these. And that's among the best titles for a podcast I've seen.
Not too shabby. I mean, we're all about the alliteration and craft beer, business news, and sports entertainment. You don't really fit either of the three, but
can't go wrong with anyone.
Can't go wrong with any of them. So tell us about like growing up in Providence. Was there, favorite spots that you liked going to? What was the comedy scene like? I guess, while you were a kid there, if there was any places or venues that you stopped by before entering into the scene?
There wasn't a huge comedy scene before I went to college, but when I got out of college, Periwinkles had shown up. Periwinkles was a little comedy club in the arcade originally. It moved twice after that. And I knew I wanted to try it. I had been writing, and I just didn't have the balls. I didn't have the beer's business or balls to go up on stage because I had stage fright. I literally would think about it. Like before I did the Muscular Dystrophy Association telethon at college, for the week before that, acne, diarrhea, same thing when I did AGT. I was terrified. I'm too old to have acne, and I should be able to control my bowels. So it was pretty sad that I was that afraid, but I really was. And then to his credit, the guy who I credit, and you guys may know him, he's kind of a Rhode Island legend, Charlie Hall was hosting the open mic night at Periwinkles. And he saw me come week after week and sit in the back all by myself like a loser. And he finally, after like the fourth week of this, he came up to me and said, "What is your deal? I've seen you lurking in the back 4 weeks in a row. You've yet to put your name on the sign-up list to go up on stage on open mic night. You wouldn't be here if you didn't want to try it. clearly no one's here for the talent. It's an open mic night. So why don't you grow a pair and get up on stage and do it? And I said, I will, Charlie. Thank you for recognizing that. Next week. And he said, no, this week. And he said, I'm going to ask the bouncer to ask you to walk out unless you take the 8th spot tonight. And I said, all right, then I guess I'm doing it. And to his credit, that was the lighted fire under my ass that I needed. And I went up on stage. I did 10 jokes. 8 of them crashed and burned horribly, but 2 of them worked. And those 2 got me through to the next week where I had 10 more jokes and 2 of those worked. And now I had 4 jokes. And that's how you build a repertoire or an act, a set. And Charlie has always been a guy I go to for advice to this day. And that was almost 40 years ago. And he wrote I have a book out. I don't know if it's around here. It's not, called Bad Dad. And he did all the illustrations. He's a great cartoonist. He's a very, very talented artist. And so I wanted to include him in that. And I still seek his wisdom when I can. He's really legendary in the comedy world. And that's where I started, Periwinkles. And then the Comedy Connection came after that. That was the old Arboretum restaurant. I remember it when it was a bank. That tells you how old I am. And then it was the Arboretum, and then it became the Comedy Connection. It's gone few owners, but Corey is, the guy who kind of runs it now, and he knows what he's doing. He's been great for Rhode Island comedy. So I'm a big fan of his as well and what he's done.
So when you, like, in your formative years as a comic, had those 2 jokes that stuck, or those, that turned into 4, 6, 8, I mean, are those jokes that you still remember to this day that, hey, that was the maybe set that changed things for me where I knew I could do this?
One of them, and I just can't do it anymore because it's way too creepy now. But when I was young, I could say it was one of my one-liners was, I went to see my little niece's tap dance recital, and I got thrown out because apparently you're not supposed to stuff the dollar bills in the leotards. And So obviously, look, you both cowered in disgust right there. Imagine a whole audience of that. So that was one of my first. I was filthy when I started. I was filthy. I had a good 5-minute bit about having sex with a morbidly obese woman. And it was, in my mind, funny. And at the time, I was right out of college. It was hysterical. But I can't do that stuff anymore, obviously. I'm too old, and it's way unwoke and way unpolitically correct these days. So, that's kind of where I was. And Charlie, again, coming back to Charlie and Frank O'Donnell and some of the older statesmen in comedy and Rhode Island at the time were nice to me. And they pulled me aside and said, look, you don't seem like you're a douche, but your stuff is filthy, and you're not going to be able to work places if you keep doing this filthy stuff. So they said you should clean it up, and I eventually took their advice.
And I guess like your style of comedy over the years, I mean, you're known for your roast, you have great audience work, you do a lot of personal stories too, which kind of just like closes in a big repertoire. But like, how long did it take you to find that niche, and what comedy do you enjoy the most?
Wow, comedy's so subjective. And it's weird. I've been in a bunch of competitions in comedy over the years, and I always find them asinine because you're comparing literally apples and oranges. Who's to say that Stephen Wright, who is a genius one-liner guy, is any funnier or less funny than Robin Williams, who's an animated guy? Who's to say that Mitch Hedberg is funnier or less funny than Jim Carrey? They're just completely different styles of comedy. And then you add in musical comedy or ventriloquism or a comedy team. There's so many different kind of variations of stand-up that it's hard to narrow one down. The stuff I write mostly is one-liners. It's called misdirection. It's a setup, punchline, and a tagline, and then multiple taglines after that. So you tag a joke to death. And so the setup may not be hysterical, probably isn't. The punchline may be funny, but the taglines are what really propel it. So it's, and each tagline takes it in a different direction. It's a left turn or a curveball. And that's the stuff. It's more fun for me to write that stuff because it's kind of a puzzle and you have to put it together. But I also do the other stuff. I have impressions and I do long stories, as you say before. But I'm known to be a one-liner guy. My wife is also a comic. She's a story person. She tells stories that are funny throughout and have a big payoff at the end. So other comics that I enjoy, Don Gavin is the guy I love the most. He's out of Boston. He's hysterically funny. And then more famous people that you might know, Mitch Hedberg, God rest his soul, Greg Giraldo, God rest his soul. A lot of these people are gone. Dangerfield, I grew up on watching Rodney Dangerfield, Richard Pryor, George Carlin. Those are the guys that I worshipped when I was a kid.
You bring up a good point with your wife too, because your wife also, a very successful comedian in her own right. You found love in someone who's funnier than you, maybe some would say. Is she the first?
She would say that. But I'm sorry.
There you go. She might say it. Yeah. But so is she the first to hear your jokes sometimes, or does she give you inspiration sometimes, or how does that work when you've got two comics in the house?
We do bounce stuff off each other, frying pans and irons and no. She tries stuff out on me, and I trust stuff out on her. Not in the bedroom, but you know what I mean. And so, like, she'll come to me with a premise, and I'll try to punch it up, or I'll come to her with a one-liner and say I need a tagline, and she'll help me out there. And I also have friends that do that as well. I can't justify buying material. I just, it's A, I'm not going to spend that money, and B, then I don't, it's kind of ugly. You're getting credit for someone else's stuff. So yeah, we bounce stuff off each other. Comics do, and my wife and my kids. My kids are now 20. They'll be 21 in December, so they're old enough to have a sense of humor, and I'll try stuff out on them. They accuse me of being horribly unfunny and all dad jokes, but I need a sounding board before I go into a comedy venue and try it out on innocent victims.
The dad jokes still hit. People cringe at them. The dad jokes still hit.
They still hit. What are you going to do? I'm a dad and I tell jokes.
That's dad jokes. So now you're in New York. I mean, you're doing regular shows at Comedy Cellar and Caroline's on Broadway. We live in such a different age where it used to be like New York was the hot spot, the place to be for entertainment and comedy. Do you still feel that's the place, or is it more, now that you can blow up so easily on TikTok, or there's now different pockets in California and Texas and all over, that New York is still the place that you need to be, a rising comedian, or just a, get your foot on the ground type of place?
Used to be. I would argue it still is. The two meccas are LA and New York. LA is better if you're an actor. And I tell everybody this. People call and ask me for advice because I've been around for a while. And people, whoever, all the comics who go on AGT reach out to me and talk to me about that stuff. But I will always say that LA is great if someone rolls out the red carpet for you. You have to go to LA, because I've lived there. I've tried it, and I have friends that have tried that as well. There's really only 3 games in LA, in Hollywood. There's the Comedy Store, there's the Laugh Factory, and there's the Improv. And the owners of those venues were such big personalities themselves that their egos made it such that if you worked at the Comedy Store for Mitzi, you weren't allowed to work for Bud Friedman at the Improv. And if you worked for Bud Friedman at the Improv, you weren't allowed to work for Jamie Masada at the Laugh Factory. And so, the comics out there are chess pieces, and they're pawns in this little chess game that's going on between the owners. Whereas in New York, we have 18 comedy clubs, last time I counted. And it's not uncommon for a club to call another club and say, send us a comic, we're down one, and we got an audience, and our guy didn't show up. And so they all seem to coexist wonderfully. New York is better to be a stand-up because it's more of a comedy town. LA is more of a Hollywood town, acting, singing, etc. So I'm not besmirching LA. It's great. I loved my time out there. My wife and I both lived out there for a little while. It's great. It's just great comics in LA have to wait 1 week to get their one spot at a great club. And it's not uncommon for Damon Wayans to show up that night and say, I want to do 2 hours. And then you get bumped off the show. And now you got to wait another week to get stage time. That never happens in New York. There's tons of stage time. And if you're not on stage in New York, it's because you're lazy, generally. Now, you have a Cano jersey behind you. Does that mean you're a Yankee fan?
I am a Yankee fan, originally from New York. Live in Rhode Island now.
Excellent. Well, I'll talk slower. And then I'm kidding. I live here. I live here. I'm living in the belly of the beast. You're speaking to me from New York right now. I'm 30 miles from Midtown Manhattan. So I should be converted, but I'm not.
Yeah, it's all good. I mean, New York, it's a little bit of a dumpster fire right now, and in the sports world, it's not much better. But it's football season. I'm over baseball,
dude. I'm a Red Sox fan. We're not throwing stones at anybody. We sucked hard this year. Both of us. It's horrible that our payrolls are so gigantic and we laid an egg. The Mets even worse. The Mets are what a dumpster fire that is. Anyway, sorry, didn't but it's balls. I'm in the theme
That's
here.
balls. You're on topic here, Tom. Don't you worry.
Man.
You're on topic. So we're talking about LA and New York. I mean, I think. I mean, in your eyes, what other hotspots are there that are coming up? You know, I feel like Nashville's mentioned a fair amount. I feel like Chicago's definitely always been around. I did a little research. Like Denver is supposed to be an emerging market for comedy. What else do you see? Like, what other places are comics flocking to now?
Well, you know, the dynamic has changed so much, and I've been at this for so long that I've seen this. When I started, it was a tape. You sent a tape. It was a VCR tape, and it was always send me a tape. You know, send me a tape. That's how you audition for someone. And now everything's a click, and it's, you know, now you have to be on social media. My wife and I, we have a social media goddess who we pay every month to put our stuff out there because she knows the algorithms and when to post and how to post and et cetera, and stuff that my wife and I were a little long in the tooth and we don't know these things. But back to your cities, Denver is a great comedy town. The Comedy Works is an A room out there. There's two of them, one in downtown and one in the burbs. I think there's an Improv in Denver now. Great comedy town, but Vegas is really, I would say, next to New York and LA. A lot of comics moved to Vegas when the real estate boom was kind of happening, and a lot of people are leaving LA because of the cost of living and the crime and everything. You know, like Rogan and his whole slew of Roganettes, they all kind of moved to they're in Texas. Where are they?
Austin.
Yeah, great city, great comedy town. Atlanta has a great comedy town. Washington, D.C. could be our, you know, there's Orlando has a decent, you know, there's great clubs because these chains, the Improv, the Laugh Factory, the Comedy Works, there's so many that you can be anywhere now and make a decent living doing comedy, where that wasn't the case when I started. You really needed to be in New York or L.A.
Do you like having the consistency at home, or do you like the change in when you get to go on tours and stuff?
What do you mean? What change are you speaking of?
Like when you get to like go to different venues and you're on multiple different tour stops, or, you know, you're coming back to Rhode Island. So it's like maybe a fresher crowd or a different perspective. Do you like that? Or do you like that? Yeah.
I do. I like being out on the road. A lot of people don't. I like it. My kids are kind of grown now, so they don't miss me. It sucked when I was a kid. When I was younger, my twins were, you know, 3 and 4 years old, and I was working on cruise ships 2 weeks out of a month. And that was horrible. I mean, you know, I was making my wife be a single parent, and, you know, I was out in the Caribbean bitching that I was out there while she was freezing at home with 2 kids. And when I would pack, I would always pack the night before, and I would put my luggage by the front door so I could just go out and get in a cab and go to the airport. And my kids would see the bag and freak out because they knew it meant I was gone for at least a week. So I hated the road when I was younger, but now I like the road. And after 2 years of pandemic, when we weren't allowed to travel, I will never bitch about getting on a plane again. During the winter, I hate the cold. So during the winter, it's not a hard sell to get me to go to Florida, Fort Lauderdale, Miami, Fort Myers. I work all those places a lot during the winter, Orlando. That's easy. And I like when you go out on the road, you kind of meet everybody and you visit red states. I live in a blue state. I'm from a blue state. Sometimes you meet the people in the red states and you just want to see how everybody else is and what their sensibilities are. So I love the road.
I've always wanted to ask about the cruise ship process. I mean, because most of the time you're only doing like 1 or 2 shows for that week. What is the rest of the time just a vacation?
It's, you know, it sounds like it, and it's neat the first couple times, but the rest of it, I mean, it's really a lonely existence. You know, you don't want to hang with the juggler or the magician generally because they're psycho. And if you have a great show, you want to hide in your cabin because everyone's like, come over here, take a picture here, eat lunch with us. And if you have a horrible show, you want to hide your head in the sand. So you're in your cabin so much that it's insane. So you stream movies and you do all this other crap. And you're right. Most ships, it's maybe 2 shows a week. You have a welcome aboard show, and then later in the week, they'll have you do a show. But there are ships now. I used to work Royal and Celebrity were my 2 biggest lines that have comedy clubs on the ship. And the Allure and the Oasis on Royal Caribbean have you doing 18 shows a week. So it's a lot. but I don't mind it. I'm out there already. I can try out new material. It gives me something to do. So I haven't done those in 10 years, but yeah. So it used to be a really lonely, horrible existence when I was doing it, especially because I was homesick. I missed home, but they pay pretty well, and I needed to pay my mortgage and my car loan and everything else. So it was a necessary evil.
Those are very important things, paying the bills.
Yeah.
Off the venue topic, what's the venue right now that you love the most, right? A venue that you've, maybe it's just home for you, or maybe it's like the gold standard that you've performed at. And then to take that a step further, what's a venue that you haven't performed at that you would love to at some point?
Well, I mean, Carnegie Hall would be great. I love New Jersey Performing Arts Center, which is a state-of-the-art, brand new place. That's where we did my season of America's Got Talent. It's huge, brand new, impeccably clean, 5 balconies. It was great. The year after that, I came back as a returning guest on AGT, and we did Radio City Music Hall, which is nice. It's obviously it's a famous venue and it's wonderful, but not nearly as great. It's huge. It's great for music, not great for comedy. It's just one giant room all the way back and spread so far back that by the time you're done with one joke, they're just hearing it in the back of the room and you're already in your next joke. And I'm a rapid fire one-liner guy. So I don't love gigantic venues. I like small theaters or comedy clubs, good comedy clubs. The Tempe, Arizona Improv has always been a really fun room for me. I don't know why. Hilarities in Cleveland. I have some random ones that I just really love. In the city, the Comedy Cellar is kind of the hot room right now, but I also love the Comic Strip and West Side Comedy Club and Stand Up New York. There's so many great. I love Dangerfields. We lost it during the pandemic. I thought we were going to lose a lot more comedy clubs during the pandemic, but that's the one we lost. And that was the first room to use me in New York. And then I really like coming home. So I really love when I get to work Corey's room out there in East Providence. Periwinkle's is long gone. The Wang Center in New York, I've done that a few times. I mean, in Boston, love that. The Wilbur, I think it's called now, the Wilbur Theater. It was Wang when I was there. And the Wang Center, I think, is now a gay bar. You don't want to go there. But the Wilbur is great. Giggles up in Boston. There's so many rooms I love. It depends on, the night, who you're on the show with, how great the audience is or how shitty the audience is. So a lot of factors go into that.
Are there comedians that you've worked with that you love working with, or you hope to work with them one day again soon? And is there anybody new in the scene that you feel is like rock solid, that you are excited to watch their career grow?
There's so many young comedy gunslingers coming up. You don't know which one's really going to catch fire. Mark Norman seems to have some heat under him right now. Let me think. From New England, guys you might know. Let me see. Yeah, there's just so many. I don't want to say some of them because I'll hurt feelings if I don't mention the others. But yeah, Boston, starting in Rhode Island, you had a choice. You could either drive 1 hour north to Boston or you could drive 3 hours south to New York. And so I chose, my wife and I moved to Boston from Providence because Periwinkle's was the only game in town and Boston had like 8 comedy clubs at the time. And I'm so glad I did that. I ended up in New York, but that stopover, that 6 years I spent in Boston, because what a great comedy town Boston was. Leno, Dennis Leary, Stephen Wright, more recently, Mark Maron and Billy Burr, Mitt Dane Cook. It's unbelievable. And those are the most famous guys, Rogan, all those guys. But the guys who aren't as famous, I think, are as good, if not better, than a lot of those guys. So, again, I mentioned Don Gavin before, but Kenny Rogerson, Lenny Clark, all those guys, those are the guys I grew up watching when I left Providence, when I'm in Providence, I got to watch Charlie Hall and Ed Regine and Frank O'Donnell and those guys who were all awesome. Then I moved to New York and saw a whole slew of new headliners, and you learn so much from them all. And it's such a great comedy town that I'm so happy that I spent the time up there and got to commingle with such greatness up there.
And you brought it up at the top of the show, but I mean, first comedian to reach the finals at America's Got Talent. The rough beat obviously was losing to a dog act, but I mean, hey, to be the comedian to reach the finals is a pretty sweet gig. Going into the show, was there any time that, you know, people are just like, hey, don't get your hopes up because like comedy hasn't necessarily progressed as far as it should have in the show? Or is it something that was just like, you know, you went in blind and luckily, you know, got to reach the finals?
Well, my mindset, first of all, I was the top human finisher my season. I'd like to point that out.
That's a good accolade. Top human finisher.
Many of my competitors, the ones who won, are now deceased. So I think in the long run, anyway, so that's my bitterness. The Olate Dogs are a great act. I'm honored to have shared the stage with them, and they are phenomenal. And if they come to Rhode Island, everyone should go see them. God, this is a brain fart. I don't even know where you went with that first question. I'm sorry. So going into that, the show had been on 6 seasons before I did the show. I never auditioned for the show. Why? Because Pierce Morgan was a judge, and Pierce Morgan would not only not put you through to the next round, he would eviscerate you on national television. And I watched this guy who had a stick surgically implanted in his ass when he was a youth come on there as a judge. He's never told a joke in his life, and he's crapping all over American comedy and American comics. And I said, there's no way I'm going to let that guy dress me down in front of 20 million viewers. So when I found out he was leaving and Howard Stern was taking his place, now you had a judges panel you could deal with. You had Sharon Osbourne, who was the wife of the Prince of Darkness. You had Howie Mandel, obviously a comedy genius, and Stern, who's basically a comedian. So I thought that's a positive judges panel. I'm not getting any younger. I should roll the dice, and that should be the year to do it. I never dreamed I'd get it out of the semifinal round because, to your earlier point, comics had never gone past the quarterfinals, I think, on the show. It was built for singers originally. Now it's come around. The wife and I call it America's Got Problems because you have to have some kind of horrible affliction for them to move on. If you watch all the finalists now, someone's blind, they're deaf, they were in a plane crash. You know, it's just they pull at your heartstrings, and you got to watch the show with a box of tissues because you're crying. So it's different. But I was afraid. But again, I wasn't getting any younger, and I had 3 small kids at home, and we hated reality. When reality TV came on board, it killed the sitcom. And that was basically how comics got on TV, was the sitcom. But reality was so much cheaper to produce that they kept throwing out the sitcoms and adding reality shows. And we thought it was a fad. It wasn't a fad. And at some point, you either, you kind of have to sleep with the enemy. You got to just eat crow and go, okay, well, if I can't beat them, I got to join them. So that's, if you want to be on primetime, if you're not on a sitcom, and there are a few of those now, you have to do these reality shows. And the amount of viewers you get on those are 10 times. We all do Leno. We all do Letterman. We all do Conan. We all do those multiple times. If you're lucky, you're getting 5 million viewers. That's a good demographic for that, a good number. And of those 5, 3 of them are probably dozing because it's late at night. They're not watching. They might be naked. That's nice, but they're not really paying attention, not engaged. Whereas AGT, 20 million was a common demographic. We hit that number frequently. 13 million for a rerun of AGT that season. So it's just a much bigger game, many more eyeballs on you, and it helps to propel your career. And I'm delighted that I did it. I will never look back and say, I wish I hadn't.
Yeah, and then after that too, I mean, you mentioned the Lenos of the world and Howard Stern and Comedy Central, all things that you were able to do after your first place human finish in America's Got Talent that year. I think I also really enjoyed the judge roast of Joan Rivers, rest in peace. But you got to do so much cool stuff afterwards. I mean, did you ever imagine that you could get any of there? Obviously, you're reflecting back and saying, "Wow, I'm entirely grateful." But did you imagine it would ever, lead you to that point where you're sort of the center of attention on these huge stages here?
You know, you kind of hope it, but you don't know what's going to. It's weird. You know, it's like a video now. You don't know which video is going to go viral that you're posting. I have a bunch of videos up now. Some of them I'm proud of. Some of them I'm not. The ones I'm not proud of, some of them are getting way more traction than the ones I'm proud of. So you never know. It's a weird kind of thing. You just got to keep swinging away and throwing a lot of stuff against the wall and seeing what sticks. You mentioned the Joan Rivers thing. Quick story there is, first of all, that was her last national television appearance. She was on cable after that, but that was her last national network television, I'm told. And she died shortly thereafter from a horrible malpractice thing that happened. But she came in like a white knight. The original plan, they had never had a comic in the finals before, and they always do duets, they call them, where they have the singer sing with the singer that the contestant looked up to their whole life. And so they decided, well, why don't we have this comedian roast the judges? And they hired Lisa Lampanelli to be my co-roastie. And Lisa Lampanelli and I were already writing jokes, ready to go, 3 days out. And then one of the NBC exec came in like a douche at the end and fired her because he didn't like something she had said on The Apprentice. So now it's 2 days before the finale, and I'm going to roast the judges alone. And so they got in touch with Joan Rivers, and she said, I have a tiny gap in my tour schedule, and I live in New York, and I will come by and help. And she could not have been more gracious, more wonderful. She demanded on meeting me right away, and her writers said, look, we want to make you look good. Joan already looks good. We're going to help you look good. We won't, if you wrote a joke that's similar to one of ours, we'll get rid of it. Don't worry about it. And she could not have been more gracious before the show, during the show, after the show. You know, it was very sweet to me, and I can die happy knowing that I'm even getting choked up just thinking about it, because she's gone and she was such a legend.
Well, to lighten the mood, what was the best joke that you gave her in that roast?
I didn't give her any of my jokes. I did my jokes. She had her own. She has a team of writers, and they all came up with great jokes. They had to abandon some of their jokes because they were a little too similar to things that I was doing, especially about Nick Cannon. We both went after Nick Cannon hard. He was the host at the time, and he was living with Mariah Carey on her couch or whatever. And so we both went after him, but her writers had written like tons of stuff to take him to task. And Sharon took a beating too. She went after Sharon pretty hard, and I didn't. So we didn't have too many conflicts. And again, just being able to share the stage with her was pinch me, I'm dreaming, you know.
That's awesome. Is there any bucket list items you have in your career now that you're trying to strive to or hoping that you get to accomplish?
You know, we just shot a special in June with a bunch of other people, and they're trying to sell them right now. We'll see who buys them. But yeah, just getting another special up would be nice. I love what I'm doing now. I love telling jokes. I get paid to make people laugh, and I do it all over the world, not just the country. I've been, you know, all over China and anyway, I'll rattle. You don't need my resume, but yeah. So it's just I love what I do, and so I want to keep doing what I do. I hope I have the health and the good fortune to do that. If another pandemic comes, I will kill somebody because we couldn't do it. We couldn't work. We were non-essential. My mother-in-law prefers the term useless, but either way, it's hurtful. And so I hated not being able to work during the pandemic. I hope that never happens again.
Which is crazy because at the end of this, it's like comedy was probably the most essential aspect of the pandemic. It's like if people didn't laugh, they were going batshit crazy.
Yeah. And we were doing Zoom shows.
Well, the liquor stores were open, though, so that's fine.
Yeah, that's true.
What was open?
Liquor stores.
The liquor stores were open, so that's maybe half true.
Yeah, liquor stores and weed stores, and that helped. Yeah, and I worked in Texas and Florida. Those people had no idea there was a pandemic. So I was the only live shows I did were down there. And then I did a bunch of Zoom shows, which sucked hard. But you did them because you just needed to do something.
Yeah. So as we, close out the show, I mean, we're in 2023. You've mentioned it a couple of times, but we live in a very PC type of world. A lot of comedy can't, well, I mean, it could still fly, but people are going to be up in arms about it. How do you, as a comedian, either adapt to the situation or block out the criticism that might come with jokes and still be able to, achieve what you do each and every night?
This is the number one issue, I think, facing comedy right now. I thought coming out of the pandemic, we couldn't work for a year and a half. It was horrible. So comics were just, we're chomping at the bit to get back at it. And then when we come back at it, we're faced with this new reality of people being offended by everything. And I mean everything. And I've had, Seinfeld famously wrote an op-ed to the New York Times saying he doesn't want to work at colleges anymore because these kids show up with a chip on their shoulder waiting for you to utter that one syllable that's going to send them into a tizzy. And then they go online and eviscerate you on multiple platforms. And people who weren't even in the same zip code during the show are jumping in. And that, knock wood, has not happened to me yet, but it's happened to good friends of mine and who aren't even that controversial. They keep moving the goalposts. Before, if someone didn't like a joke, they would just say, okay, that's not my cup of tea, and I'll just sit here and wait for the next joke. Now they make a big thing out of it. Will Smith gets up and smacks the shit out of Chris Rock, or, someone tries to boycott that club. They try to get people online to not let comics work. There's a Christian comic who does jokes about pro-life, and a bunch of young activists boycotted, picketed outside the comedy club until they fired the kid. What happened to freedom of speech? I'm not a, pro-life dude, but I mean, come on, everyone should be able to do whatever they want to do. Now you can't say homeless. Now you have to say unhoused or undomiciled. This is shit we all have to, I used to come out and say, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. And now you have to say, good evening, ladies who identify as gentlemen and gentlemen who identify as ladies and everybody else in between. And, what are your pronouns? All this shit. I personally, I can't stand it. And I've been pretty vocal about it. People know that I can't stand it. I've talked about it a million times on radio and podcasts. I'm really disgruntled with society overall. My number one video it's got, last time I looked, 17 million views, is the one where I compare the lyrics of WAP, and I don't want to say what that is, but versus the canceled song of Baby It's Cold Outside. And I'm just trying to show how ridiculous it is. And, I can go to the supermarket tomorrow and I can't buy Aunt Jemima pancake mix or syrup, and I can't buy Uncle Ben's, but 2 aisles over I can buy Spick and Span. How is that not, where is the line drawn, and why do you keep moving these goalposts so that the comics have to adjust? And comedy clubs are pretty cool about it. But when you do, it's all C's for us. It's corporate, college, cruise ship, casino, comedy club. The two colleges and corporates pay the most. They have the deepest pockets. And those are the ones that want you to have 10 conference calls with them before you do the gig. You're not going to do anything sexist. You're not going to do any trans jokes. You're not going to do any jokes about little people. You're not going to do jokes about, women. You can't do jokes about children. It's like you're going to narrow this to, it's just an hour of self-deprecating humor where I'm just going to shit on myself for an hour, and that's supposed to entertain everybody. That's where we are now. And I'm hoping the pendulum swings back at some point to normalcy, because it's killing us. It's not just us. It's killing late night TV shows. It's killing everybody. The writers have to worry about what is uttered by Colbert and Myers and all those guys now. It's a horrible, horrible affliction on entertainment, and they should just leave us alone. Comedy should be the last bastion of free speech, and it's not right now, and that's very disturbing.
Tom, I got to say, it's been bothering me all episode where I knew you from, and because I had obviously done my research before this, and Will, had mentioned we're having you on. It was the Baby It's Cold Outside and WAP. That's where I know you from. I remember how absurd that video was.
Yeah.
And the lift off my shoulder, having known that, I'm like, God, this guy, have I met this guy somewhere? No, it's because he was breaking down the lyrics of WAP versus Baby It's Cold Outside.
Yeah, and there are places I can close with that, but I certainly can't close with that bit because just reading those lyrics is crazy. So it's a difficult time for all comics right now. If you're squeaky clean, you shouldn't have an issue. But even if Seinfeld is getting hate mail, there's no one cleaner. I mean, that guy is squeaky clean. He's pristine. If he's pissing you off, then how the hell are the rest of us supposed to function? But when I come to Woonsocket on the 22nd, I will be talking to adults, and hopefully they can accept what I'm talking about and not have a hissy fit.
Absolutely. Before we do the promos, one last question.
6 inches.
There we go.
Sorry.
Thank God we cleared the air there.
Let's hold it in half. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, the minimum to be on this show, right? I don't think people understand, fans and consumers of comedians are pretty much, we're all small-minded. We just scroll on the phones. We like who we like. We go and see the shows. But there's such, tying in our name, Beers, Business, and Balls, there's a business behind the comedy aspect. Turning your jokes into this band and business, how hard is it, when you're trying to just be funny and worry about the comedy sides of things to now manage a business in yourself? And it's like, I got to promote, sell tickets, write a book, do specials. How is it, trying to do both of those things simultaneously?
It's a chore. It's not something when you have a dream of being a comedian, you don't think about that. You don't think about, you're now your own travel agent. You're your own business manager. You have to do your own accounting. You have to do all that stuff. And it's a daunting task, but I've been at it for so long. And then you get a team around you. That's why you cut up your pie into little pieces, because your manager looks out over your agents. I have a cruise ship agent. I have a college agent, and I have a personal appearance agent. And the manager controls them. And then, we're incorporated now. The wife and I have a comedy business. It's called Comedy on Demand. And after AGT, we started that for tax purposes and everything else. So, yeah, that's all stuff you have to deal with. But you kind of have to deal with that, I think, in any field. Anytime you're an entrepreneur, anytime you kind of have to promote yourself. And that's why we're doing the social media thing that I never saw coming. When I was started in 1988 or whatever, I never looked back and said, wow, or looked forward and said, one day there's going to be people streaming videos and I'm going to have a presence on all them. And I'm going to have to pay a woman who knows all this stuff, who's significantly younger than me and has her finger on that pulse. And so, yeah, you have to, it's daunting, but I have 2 kids in college. You have to pay attention to the numbers. That's an important part of the business.
Well, this has been fantastic, Tom. You've got a lot coming up, a lot of exciting things. So where can our listeners either find you maybe on tour? Where can they find you on social media? How can they keep up with what you're doing and also any exciting things that you've got in the pipeline? Well,
I know you guys have more than just a Rhode Island following. So I will tell you, let's start with Rhode Island. I'm at the Stadium Theater on the 22nd in Woonsocket, where I believe the zip code is EIEIO. But I love Woonsocket. I can't wait to go and chat with the French Canadians up there and everybody else. But yeah, that's coming up. After that, rehab. I think I should go to rehab. No, I won't go to rehab. Yeah, I got a lot of stuff coming up. It's crazy. October is insane. This weekend, I'm in New York. I'm at the Comic Strip both Friday and Saturday. And then I'm in Vegas next week. I'm at the Comedy Cellar in Vegas, which is at the Rio Hotel and Casino. And I'm there the 11th through the 18th. Or if you're in Vegas, come by there. And then, God, I don't even know if that's probably on my website or on social media. We promote the dates coming up. But yeah, that's where you can find me. And then I'm easy to find on social media. I'm at Tom Cotter Comic. That's probably backwards. I hope you can read it. And
no, it's good. It's all good.
Yeah, TikTok and Instagram and all that crap that we have to do. Yeah, so pretty easy to find, which is shocking because I'm in the witness protection program. So, but yeah, that's it. And I love chatting with you guys. This is fun. It's nice to chat with people from Rhode Island, even if you're a Yankee fan. It's all right. I'm not going to hold that against you.
It's like half the state's Yankee fans, though, so it's all right.
Yeah,
it's true.
Most of my, I'm the idiot that wears the Red Sox jersey to Yankee Stadium, and by the second inning, it's covered in saliva. If someone murdered me, there'd be 1,000 suspects because
I will say. No, I wore a Yankee jersey to Fenway, and I was probably no more than 12 years old. And the expletives that I learned that day were fun.
Yeah, it's very educational.
Yeah,
I love going to those. I used to go to Fenway. I remember one night we were there, and there was one douchebag at the end of our row wouldn't stand up for the national anthem when we were all standing. So I get up to get a beer, and I just pushed his wheelchair over, and he started That didn't happen. That didn't happen. Everybody. It was a joke. Tom Cotter joking.
Oh my God.
Shit. Tom, well, we appreciate it. Thanks so much. Go check out the show if you are in Rhode Island. But at the time this airs, it'll be the week after. So check out all the social medias and stuff. But Tom, we appreciate the time. Thanks so much and talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it. This was fun.